Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, here today to to talk about the purpose of game critique. And today we're going to talk about this with respect to the latest patch for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. These games have had a bit of controversy surrounding them, haven't they? Oh yes, they have. So let's talk about it. Nintendo actually realized and recognized the performance problems that Scarlet and Violet had. I am pleasantly surprised but shocked nonetheless, and am glad that they are taking steps to remedy the issues. And I think 1.1 as a whole is a big step in the right direction. The frame rate is overall just a little bit smoother. But it should never have released in that state. Yes, it was playable, but if the game being just straight up technically playable is the baseline, then that baseline is pretty freaking low, don't you agree? But I think this whole Scarlet and Violet release fiasco has kind of brought back a general truth about the games industry that I don't really see talked about all that often. That I feel like a lot of people, especially in the games critique industry, fail to mention or realize. The impact a game's performance has on an individual consumer is to some degree dependent on the individual. Now, whether or not these issues existed, that's objectable. That's objective. Did the game have frame rate issues? Yes, it still kind of does. Well, yes, it does. If it's not 60 FPS, I would say it does have issues. Yes. Does the game look fugly? Yes. Can the camera glitch out? Yes. Hell, I had a Pokeball in the open world that I still couldn't collect because I guess the game glitched or whatever. Could you fall underneath the world? I saw some clips of that, so yeah. Did they only have one RNG seed for competitive so you could literally find out which turn one-hit KOs happened on and repeat that? I heard that was a thing. I haven't seen it in action, but I have heard that that's a thing. Or at least was. Can you qualify a game as broken with all of the above? Well, that's debatable. And did the game sell well? And was it overall received well on the whole? Again, probably yes. Now, if that is right, that's another thing, but what I tend to find that people gloss over or ignore is that the performance of a game and what impact that has on an individual depends on what the individual wants to get out of the game. I would imagine most people don't go into a game like Pokemon wanting cutting-edge graphics and 144 FPS at all times, on top of a beautifully rendered and designed open world, alongside an in-depth and emotionally gripping story accompanied by innovative gameplay. Would people be receptive to that? Probably. But is it a requirement for a lot of people? No. Look, I've been playing Scarlet and Violet since near release, and I've had a mostly enjoyable go of it at least. Hell, I even decided to swap over from Scarlet to Violet because I enjoyed the game so much I was willing to do that, and I realized after the first gym and first Titan battle that I preferred Violet's aesthetic overall, and I didn't mind doing so because the game that was there was fun and enjoyable for me. Look, I just find the Pokemon gameplay loop to be an enjoyable one, despite the difficulty problems that I have with it as a whole. Would I love an in-game hard mode with far better balancing and XP scaling? Absolutely! But with all those faults that I mentioned before, why can I enjoy a game that has so many of those flaws? That many have, and rightfully so I may add, point out. Hell, I've pointed them out in previous videos on this series, on this game. Because people en masse aren't that picky, I think. Hell, my horizon personally for types of games that I like is pretty wide, probably wider than average. I can go from playing Modern Warfare 2, God of War, Ragnarok, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Elden Ring, or Persona, on say a PS5 with 1440p HDR, gamed with very high graphical fidelity and solid frame rates, or beautifully stylized art styles, to something like Pokemon that has literally none of those things, and honestly never had. Because I find the core identity of the series enjoyable, because what I want to get out of this series, what I want to get out of these games is still there, and what is there is enjoyable enough for me to warrant me playing the games. I like going around and collecting all the new Pokemon. I like constructing teams of my own design, and customizing my own Pokemon while going on an adventure to defeat gyms or Titan Pokemon, or whatever the hell I want to do. It's a game and a series where I can just turn my brain off for a bit, maybe throw on a YouTube video or a stream or whatever I want to watch, and just unwind and relax. And the thing with a lot of people is when they go into a new game in a series that they love, or just a new game in general, I would argue, they aren't going to be actively searching out things to complain about, despite what the internet may seem like at times. They're going to go in and probably subconsciously even, or in some cases consciously, search out for what they enjoy. And if they hit a slog, they might just go do something else in the game, or play something else and ignore what they don't like, or just put their head down, barrel through it, say that sucked, and move on to what they like. I don't have any evidence to support that, but it makes sense to me. Maybe it makes sense to me because that's kind of like what I do when I go into a new game in a series that I really enjoy. I think the same way. Hell, I did it with Xenoblade 3. I do that with a new Final Fantasy XIV patch, or the new God of War, or whatever. It's more enjoyable and rewarding to focus on what you personally like than to focus on what you don't like. When you go out and actively play a new game, you want to enjoy that game. If you're the consumer, that makes sense to me. Do I have analytical evidence to back that claim up? No, but again, it just makes sense to me. And leave a comment down below if it makes sense to you, if you agree with me there. And if you go into a game as a critic, well, you may be looking for what you like, but you are probably also, at least subconsciously in some cases, looking for things to critique, to point out and say, hey, this could be better. The flaws, the negatives, the problems, whether that be the art style, the performance, an options menu, a gameplay mechanic or gameplay loop, the voice acting, or whatever. Now, is that mindset a problem? Well, honestly, it depends. It depends on what you want to get out of games critique. I'd argue game critique should be oriented and focused on informing the consumer so that they can make their own informed decision. Game critique shouldn't be a fancy replacement for a game's QA team, in my opinion. It could be at least post-launch, but its primary purpose should be to inform the consumer. And what bothers an individual consumer can vary from individual to individual. Maybe someone needs a comprehensive options menu that is full of things like a robust subtitle options menu that they can tailor to their own personal needs. God of War Ragnarok has that, for instance. That consumer needs to be informed if a game has what they need. Because to some people it may be a preference, and to others it may be a requirement. Or say maybe someone suffers from motion sickness in FPS games, so they need to know if the game has a field of view slider, or at least a field of view setting, so that they can play the game without feeling physically ill. Or maybe someone just doesn't like really story-heavy driven games, and they want to know if there could be a problem with a particular game. So they want to look up how cutscene heavy the latest game is. That was a big thing with a lot of World of Warcraft players that wanted to try out Final Fantasy XIV, because that game is a far more story and cutscene heavy experience than World of Warcraft, and that's not going to land for everybody. It landed for me. I liked those styles of games. Like I said before, I have a wide horizon I have a broad horizon when it comes to types of games that I like, but not everyone does, and that's fine. It's personal preference. But if you're going to go into a game, you deserve to at least have information available to you surrounding that so that you can make your own informed decision. Or maybe someone is the opposite, like me, not necessarily me, but someone's just the opposite, and they actively pursue story-rich experiences, and they don't really want a difficult or complicated gameplay loop. And maybe they just want to know if there is a quality story waiting for them. Consumers have a wide range of different things that they need or prefer, and what they want to get out of their games. So when people say, well, the game is Pokemon, it's going to sell well either way, so what's the point in talking about the bad or bringing it up? Well, critique, like I said earlier, should be focused on informing the consumer of these things so that they can make their own decisions. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have a lot of formula changes to previous Pokemon games, and people should be made aware of that, because originally, I wasn't that big on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I wasn't gonna get it. Then I saw, hey, they're really changing things up here. This looks far more entertaining to me. But maybe there's someone out there who's like, hey, this really isn't the Pokemon that I want. I don't want to buy this. And whether that person's in the minority or the majority, that is irrelevant, because that is up to the person's individual choice to whether or not to purchase or play a game. Whatever broader reach that or impact that may have is irrelevant on that individual level. Because like I said earlier, critique should be focused on informing the consumer of these things so that they can make their own decisions. If Nintendo and Game Freak weren't aware of Scarlet and Violet's performance issues before it got a ton of attention, then I would question if they even played the freaking game. Now, did the amount of attention the problems receive, did all that attention influence the decision to actually start patching the most egregious issues? Yeah, probably. And that has value in of itself, because collectively, the consumers have a voice that can be used to guide future decisions, and the consumer has the right to critique or just be angry about their game. It doesn't have to be constructive. And that is something I find a lot of people miss out on. You can just be pissed off that the game sucks, or that the game is not what you expected. So long as you're not, like, harassing anybody over it. Yeah, like, within reason, obviously. And you know it's the internet, so you're gonna have to put those qualifiers there, but still. Like, if you want to say, hey, this game freaking sucks, I don't like it. If you want to make a video about that, if you want to make a Twitter post, or a blog post, or whatever you want to do, again, within reason, that is your prerogative as a consumer. Now, is the collective criticism surrounding Scarlet and Violet constructive in the end? And will that lead to a better product? Hopefully. But again, we're missing the forest for the trees there. It's not up to the consumer to fix your own game. The consumer deserves to be informed of what's there so that they can make an informed decision whether or not they will enjoy the game and want to get out of it. Personally, I'm really enjoying Scarlet and Violet. I love the additions to the formula. I love the open world, the raid fights. I love Miraidon and riding around on him. Honestly, it's my favorite iteration of legendaries in the series. I prefer the fact that they're actual characters, that they're actually a gameplay mechanic, that isn't just some random boss you fight like 90% of the way through the campaign, and that you probably, let's be honest, just end up using your Master Ball on, or sit there for like half an hour, wasting Ultra Balls on the thing. I far prefer the style of Legendary in this game. I love Miraidon, and I love the characters in the game so far. The story overall is way better than previous games to me, and I've actually had a few actually difficult encounters that forced me not to just press Ember ad infinitum on my fire starter and call it a GG, because I can just walk to a more difficult area. That's cool! I like that! I'm enjoying that! I really like the game, and mechanically, it's probably some of, if not in the upper echelon of my favorite Pokemon games ever from a mechanics perspective. Hell, even a story perspective, honestly. Like, up there with Gale of Darkness, at least. But its flaws and issues deserve to be dragged into the light, so that others can make informed decisions about whether or not they want to maybe or not get the game. And then, after that is accomplished for feedback, after that is accomplished, then is it okay for that feedback to have been and continue to be received by the developers or the publisher, so that the games and the series in the future can react accordingly? Sure. But that's not the primary purpose. And maybe they choose to ignore community feedback, and the next Pokemon game suffers financially because of it. Then that's the consequence of that choice. And maybe they choose to ignore it, and the game still sells a ton, if not more than last time. Hell, it's Pokemon, let's be honest here. Then that's still the consequence of that choice. But either way, for the millionth time here, games critique, the primary purpose of it, should be to inform the consumer, so that they can make a personal decision about whether or not the problems that are presented are sufficient enough to deter a purchase or not. Critique's main purpose shouldn't be to QA the game for the developing publisher. It can provide actionable criticism, but it shouldn't be the primary purpose in my opinion. And like I said before, if at the end of the day, you receive all this feedback about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and you're like, you know what? That stuff, not gonna bother me. I'm probably still gonna have an enjoyable time. I want to buy the game. Good on you. I still enjoy the game. Hell, like I said before, it's probably some of my favorite Pokemon experiences out there. And maybe for you, it does ruin it. It does impede your enjoyment to the point where you don't want to play the game. That is important for you to know, so that you, on the individual level, can make your own choice and your own decision. You don't have to agree with critique. You don't even have to read it or consume it if you don't want to. But that useful, knowledgeable, informative critique should be available to you. It's just you can choose to do with it and receive of it however you want. So I'm going to call the video there for today. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed the video, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and especially patch 1.1. You enjoying the game? You not enjoying the game? Let me know. And let me know why. I would love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions. And do you agree with me on my stance on video game critique? I would love to hear your thoughts. Whether or not you agree with me or disagree with me, just let me know and let me know why, because I want to hear your perspective. And leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe out there, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.